What if I told you that behind the loud guitars and screaming vocals, some of heavy metal's biggest names weren't just wild on stage, they were absolute nightmares off it? From violent outbursts to shocking betrayals, these so-called icons left trails of chaos that fans and bandmates would never forget. They had the fame, the power, and the spotlight, but instead of using it for greatness, they showed the darkest, ugliest sides of themselves. These are the 20 worst jerks in heavy metal history. 20. Dave Mustaine, Megadeth. Dave Mustaine is a guitar legend, the mastermind behind Megadeth, and one of the founding members of Metallica. But his story is just as much about feuds as it is about riffs. After being kicked out of Metallica in the early days, Mustaine carried a decades-long grudge, often lashing out publicly against his former bandmates. His interviews are filled with bitter remarks, fueled by anger and insecurity. Within Megadeth, he became notorious for firing members at the slightest disagreement, creating an unstable lineup that went through dozens of musicians. Fans also remember his public meltdowns, whether it was storming off stage mid-show or insulting entire crowds. Mustaine's genius on the guitar is unquestionable, but his inability to let go of grudges and his combative personality earned him a reputation as one of metal's biggest jerks. 19. Axl Rose, Guns N' Roses. If there's one name that screams rockstar ego, it's Axl Rose. The Guns N' Roses frontman is legendary for his voice, but equally infamous for his temper. Fans grew used to waiting hours because Axl showed up late, or sometimes not at all. Concerts ended in chaos when he stormed off stage, sometimes after attacking fans who dared to take pictures or throw objects. His feuds weren't limited to the audience. Axl's war with his own bandmates tore Guns N' Roses apart at the height of their fame. Reporters, critics, and even fellow rockers all got a taste of his fury. With his explosive temper and diva behavior, Axl turned what could have been one of the greatest bands in history into a powder keg of drama. 18. Glenn Danzig Misfits. Glenn Danzig helped shape horror punk and metal with his bands Misfits and Danzig, but his larger-than-life ego turned many fans against him. He's infamous for arrogance, demanding respect while treating others with contempt. On stage and off, he clashed with musicians who worked with him, often belittling them publicly. Fans recall him refusing autographs or showing open disdain toward the very people who supported his career. Perhaps the most infamous moment came when he got knocked out backstage after trying to intimidate another musician, a video that went viral and turned him into a cautionary tale of what happens when arrogance meets reality. Danzig may have created iconic songs, but his behavior toward others made him one of the most disliked figures in the heavy metal community. 17. Varg Vikernes Burzum. When it comes to infamy, few metal musicians rival Varg Vikernes. The one-man project behind Burzum, Varg, is remembered less for his music and more for his crimes. In the early 1990s, he became infamous for burning down several churches in Norway, acts that shocked the world. Even worse, he murdered fellow musician Euronymous of Mayhem, a crime that led to his long prison sentence. Beyond the violence, Varg's racist and extremist views made him one of the most toxic figures in black metal history. While some still praise his atmospheric music, his actions cast a shadow over the entire scene, forever linking black metal with criminality and hatred. In the world of heavy metal jerks, Varg isn't just a loudmouth, he's a convicted killer who made infamy his brand. 16. Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent isn't exactly pure heavy metal, but his impact on the scene and his endless controversies make him impossible to ignore. Known as the Motor City Madman, Nugent built a reputation on over-the-top antics, but his real downfall came from his mouth. He became infamous for offensive rants, aggressive political speeches, and a level of arrogance that alienated entire audiences. Even among musicians, his ego was legendary, constantly bragging about his hunting skills and lifestyle while belittling anyone who disagreed. While his guitar playing earned him fans in the 70s and 80s, today, Nugent is remembered more as a loudmouth who insulted his own audience than as a musician. In the world of metal-adjacent figures, few have a jerk reputation as strong as Ted Nugent's. 15. Kerry King, Slayer. Slayer guitarist Kerry King is known for his aggressive riffs, but his personality outside of the music isn't so celebrated. He has a long history of publicly trashing other bands, dismissing their music, and mocking their fans. His sharp tongue made him notorious in the metal press, where he never hesitated to insult peers, whether it was questioning their authenticity or outright calling them garbage. Bandmates and collaborators often described him as distant and unfriendly, caring little for relationships outside of his tight Slayer circle. While his contributions to thrash metal are monumental, Carey's reputation for being abrasive and unfriendly to almost everyone else secured his place on the jerk list. 14. Sebastian Bach, Skid Row. In the late 80s and early 90s, Sebastian Bach was one of the most exciting frontmen in metal, but behind the soaring vocals and flowing hair was a personality that often crossed the line. Bach became infamous for brawls with fans, sometimes attacking people mid-concert. His arrogance and constant clashes with his own bandmates eventually led to his exit from Skid Row. In interviews, he came across as self-obsessed, more concerned with his image than his music. Over the years, stories piled up of his drunken antics, ego-driven fights, and inability to get along with others. Fans who once adored him began to see him as more trouble than he was worth. His voice remains iconic, but his reputation for arrogance ensures he'll always be remembered as one of rock's biggest jerks. 13. Gene Simmons, Kiss. When people think of rock egos, Gene Simmons often tops the list. The Kiss bassist turned his band into a merchandising empire, but his greed and arrogance left many fans cold. Simmons has made countless offensive remarks in interviews, often insulting women, other musicians, or entire fan bases. His unapologetic focus on money over music made him a symbol of rockstar excess. Within Kiss, his dominating personality created constant tension, as he often acted like the band was his personal business. Fans loved to hate him, pointing to his endless self-promotion as proof that his ego is bigger than his talent. Gene may have built one of the most recognizable brands in rock, but he did it while stepping on just about everyone else along the way. 12. Phil Anselmo, Pantera. Phil Anselmo is one of the most powerful frontmen in metal history, but his personal behavior often overshadows his music. During Pantera's peak, Anselmo developed a reputation for drunken meltdowns, fights, and offensive rants. His most infamous moment came when he made racist gestures on stage, sparking outrage and permanently damaging his reputation. Bandmates struggled to deal with his volatility, with constant tension boiling over behind the scenes. Fans loved his voice and presence, but they couldn't ignore his toxic behavior. Even today, Anselmo remains a controversial figure, with many seeing him as a symbol of wasted talent mixed with self-destructive arrogance. 11. Yngwie Malmsteen. Yngwie Malmsteen is a guitar virtuoso whose technical skills influenced countless players, but his ego is almost as famous as his playing. Known for his diva-like personality, Malmsteen was once caught on tape screaming, "You've unleashed the F-ing fury," at an airline attendant, a moment that perfectly summed up his temper. Bandmates and collaborators often describe him as controlling and impossible to work with, as he demands perfection while offering little respect in return. His arrogance turned off many fans, who saw him as a genius consumed by his own self-importance. While his guitar playing will always be admired, Malmsteen's reputation as one of the biggest egomaniacs in rock history isn't going away anytime soon. 10. Blackie Lawless, W.A.S.P. Blackie Lawless helped define shock rock with W.A.S.P., but behind the theatrics was a controlling and often cruel band leader. Lawless was infamous for mistreating his bandmates, replacing them at will, and running the group like a dictatorship. His obsession with himself turned W.A.S.P. into a vehicle for his own ego, with other musicians treated as disposable. Stories circulated about his arrogance and unwillingness to share the spotlight. Fans loved the wild stage shows, but behind the scenes, Blackie's personality drove away talent and created endless drama. His cruelty toward collaborators earned him a permanent spot on the jerk list. 9. Lars Ulrich, Metallica. Lars Ulrich is a great drummer and co-founder of Metallica, but fans have never forgiven him for the Napster debacle. When Lars led the charge against file sharing in the early 2000s, many saw him as greedy and elitist, attacking the very fans who made Metallica famous. Beyond that, his reputation as whiny and arrogant has followed him for decades. Bandmates often clashed with him, as seen in the documentary Some Kind of Monster, where his ego and controlling nature were on full display. While he helped build one of the biggest metal bands of all time, Lars also became one of the most disliked figures in rock, earning his place here as a jerk with a drum kit. 8. David Lee Roth, Van Halen. David Lee Roth may be more glam rock than heavy metal, but his influence on the metal scene is undeniable. Known as Diamond Dave, Roth was the life of the party on stage, but a nightmare off it. His ego and constant drama alienated his bandmates, leading to his departure from Van Halen during their peak. Roth's need for attention, combined with his dismissive attitude toward others, made him one of rock's most frustrating personalities. Fans loved his energy, but behind the scenes, he left chaos wherever he went. Roth's reputation as one of music's biggest divas keeps him locked on this list. 7. Joey DeMaio, Manowar. Joey DeMaio is the bassist and leader of Manowar, a band known for over-the-top metal anthems and endless bravado. But DeMaio's ego often overshadowed the music. He developed a reputation for non-stop bragging, declaring Manowar the true kings of metal, while mocking nearly every other band. His endless self-promotion and trash talk made him a laughingstock to many, while his authoritarian leadership style frustrated his bandmates. Fans began to see his theatrics as less about metal pride and more about pure arrogance. DeMaio turned a love of epic metal into a one-man ego show, cementing his place as one of the genre's most unbearable figures. 6. Paul Di'Anno, Iron Maiden. Paul Di'Anno was Iron Maiden's first singer, and while his voice helped launch the band, his personal demons destroyed his career. Known for constant fights and clashes with bandmates, Di'Anno's wild lifestyle eventually forced Maiden to replace him. In later years, he became notorious for bitterly trashing the band in interviews, often insulting the very group that gave him his fame. His legal troubles, arrests, and unpredictable behavior only worsened his reputation. Fans who once celebrated his role in Maiden's early days now see him as a cautionary tale of wasted potential and bitterness. 5. Tommy Lee Motley Crue. Tommy Lee built his fame on wild antics, but many of those antics crossed into cruelty and abuse. Known for his out-of-control partying, Lee often ended up in fights, scandals, and destructive relationships. His abusive behavior toward partners made headlines, staining his reputation permanently. On tour, he caused chaos with his recklessness, creating an environment that was as dangerous as it was entertaining. While some fans still see him as the ultimate rock and roll wild child, others remember the darker side of his behavior. Tommy Lee may be a household name, but much of it is built on infamy rather than admiration. 4. Don Dokken. Don Dokken fronted one of the biggest bands of the 80s, but his ego and constant clashes with guitarist George Lynch made the group implode. Known for his arrogance and inability to compromise, Don's behavior caused endless tension within Dokken. Fans often joke that the band spent as much time fighting as they did playing music. His reputation for being difficult carried into his later career, where collaborations often ended in frustration. While his voice helped define an era, his inability to get along with others turned him into one of metal's most notorious egos. 3. Scott Weiland, Stone Temple Pilots, Velvet Revolver. Scott Weiland isn't pure heavy metal, but his ties to the scene through Velvet Revolver keep him in the conversation. His career was marked by incredible talent and endless chaos. Weiland battled severe drug addiction, which fueled meltdowns on stage, missed shows, and constant clashes with bandmates. Both Stone Temple Pilots and Velvet Revolver eventually fired him due to his erratic behavior. Fans who admired his artistry grew frustrated with his inability to stay sober and focused. Weiland's tragic death cemented him as a cautionary tale, a man whose demons made him both brilliant and impossible to work with. 2. Ritchie Blackmore, Deep Purple, Rainbow. Ritchie Blackmore is one of the greatest guitarists in rock history, but also one of the hardest to work with. His reputation for hostility and unpredictability followed him through Deep Purple and Rainbow. Bandmates often described him as cold, moody, and controlling, with sudden outbursts that derailed tours and recording sessions. He was notorious for walking off stage mid-performance if something annoyed him, leaving fans stunned. Despite his brilliance, Blackmore's inability to collaborate or show respect to others left a trail of burned bridges. His genius and jerk reputation are forever intertwined. 1. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne may be beloved as the Prince of Darkness, but his history is filled with some of the most outrageous and cruel antics in rock. From biting the head off a bat on stage to attacking his wife Sharon in a drunken rage, Ozzy's wild behavior went far beyond entertainment. His outbursts, violence, and drug-fueled chaos made him both fascinating and feared. While fans often excuse his antics as part of his persona, the truth is that Ozzy's actions hurt people, bandmates, family, and even animals. And there you have it, the wild, twisted tales of the biggest jerks heavy metal has ever seen. But here's the question, do you think being a jerk is just part of the heavy metal lifestyle, or should these stars be remembered more for their chaos than their music? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you never miss the darker side of rock history.